I'm Emily Kirsch, founder and managing partner of Powerhouse Ventures and founder and CEO of Powerhouse Innovation. This is What It Takes, a show about the entrepreneurs making our clean, energy-abundant future a reality. As an aging grid faces rising demand, increasing complexity, and more frequent stress events, one thing has become clear. We don't just need more power, we need power that can show up at the right time, in the right place, and at the right price. What's far less settled is how we get there. Should large energy users build their own power? Should they treat the power grid as something to work around rather than work with? Or is there a way for new load to actively strengthen the grid by contributing capacity when it's needed most? This moment is being shaped by real market signals. Just last week, PJM, the largest power market in the US, cleared its latest capacity auction at the market cap yet again, meaning PJM had to pay the highest possible price to ensure enough power was available. This underscores how tight supply has become and how quickly affordability pressures are building. As data center demand accelerates, those pressures are no longer abstract. They're showing up in prices, planning decisions, and ultimately who pays. These questions have been a through line for us this year on What It Takes. We've talked with founders working across the grid from storage and interconnection to transmission and large-scale development. Today's conversation brings many of those threads together. Dana Guernsey and her team at Voltus are tackling that challenge at the intersection of supply and demand, turning customer-side flexibility into dependable grid capacity. Voltus sits between energy users and grid operators, aggregating flexible demand from sources like demand response, EV charging, batteries, and on-site generation, and translating it into dispatchable capacity that markets value and pay for. Voltus's business model is a value share. The company monetizes that flexibility in energy markets and shares the resulting value with the customers providing it. Voltus operates across all major North American power markets, even in an industry where each ISO and RTO plays by different rules. Today, the company manages more than 8 gigawatts of flexible capacity and supports tens of thousands of customer sites with resources dispatched thousands of times each year. On this last episode of the year, I spoke with Dana Guernsey, co-founder and CEO of Voltus. We talked about her journey from growing up in Queens, New York, to coming of age around 9/11, to discovering energy markets during her time at EnerNOC, to founding Voltus while starting a family. That path shaped how Dana thinks about complexity, customers, and reliability, and ultimately led her to build Voltus into a platform designed to help make clean, affordable, and reliable power something we don't have to trade off against growth. Dana Guernsey, welcome to What It Takes.
Emily, thank you for having me.
Of course. You grew up in Bayside, Queens, New York. What was it like growing up in Queens, and what were you like as a kid?
Oh gosh. Let's see. I think growing up in Queens, it definitely normalizes differences. So Queens, as you know, is incredibly diverse. And so you don't grow up thinking that there's like one normal way to live. There's just like a wide range of outcomes that feel normal. I'm sure my friends out there would be like, we knew you weren't normal. But like back to your question. Well, one thing I am white. I was also white at the time. I still am. But growing up white in Queens actually means that I was the minority, which even at the time I think I understood was pretty unusual in America. And so you're surrounded by people from everywhere, different backgrounds, cultures, what have you, different food. Queens has excellent food, probably rivals the best in the world for some of the more ethnic food. But point being, it's also very urban, so it builds independence early. And I think being a city kid gives you that sort of, it's certain kind of confidence that I've come to realize later on. You get those like street smarts early. And so you have this like figure it out or it's going to suck kind of moment often when you're growing up. And those experiences
That's a good New York tagline, good Queens tagline.
Yeah,
figure it out or it's going to suck.
Totally. But it builds self-reliance. And so just as an example, I would take public transit alone at a pretty young age.
How old were you when you started?
I would say, I think middle school was maybe the earliest that it was consistent. So I would take the city bus, the Q28 and get myself around. And there were no cell phones back then. I did have a beeper, which felt very advanced at the time and probably now is most useful as things that people make fun of me for. But the general vibe was that there wasn't much hand holding and you kind of have to figure it out. And so, I think other than that, I focused a lot on friendships. Those were incredibly important to me early on to like get through things together. And I had a wide range of friends, including like very, very different socioeconomic statuses. And that just felt normal. And so, yeah, I guess other than all that, I probably was pretty average as a kid. I'm sure I annoyed my parents plenty, but like nothing earth shattering to report.
What was your personality like? Like rule follower, rule breaker, nerdy, athletic, all the above?
Oh gosh. Like probably rule follower, but first like very thoughtful observer of like where the boundaries of the rules were. Uh Athletic. I tried to be athletic. I just like didn't have that much exposure to sports in the sense that I would go to summer camp. I always loved going to summer camp and
Hmm.
getting my fill of sports in that way. But
Hmm.
it's just like a concrete jungle. So it was tennis, it was volleyball, it was stuff like that. I
Hmm.
did get a taste of skiing early
Mm.
on.
Hmm.
I would go skiing with my father, and that
Mm.
really stuck to this day. So
What did your parents do for work growing up, and how did they influence you?
uh, my dad was a lawyer, and my mother was mostly a stay-at-home mom. She did a
Hmm.
little English teaching, but
Mm.
she stayed home. And how they shaped me was, I think the most honest answer is probably through contrast. So don't get me wrong,
Hmm.
I love my parents. I
Hmm.
appreciate them a lot more now than I did at the time. I'm certain that's
Same with
probably
probably every
I was going to say
teenager.
that's probably a tale as old as time. Like that's pretty typical. But growing up,
Yeah.
I remember this feeling of wanting my life to look different.
Hmm.
And so they separated when I was in third grade. It was
Mm.
messy. I didn't have a lot
Mm.
of extended family. And so many of my early memories were tied to just wanting to make sure I, quote unquote, got out of Queens after I just said all those
Mhm.
wonderful things. But I was thinking more about
Mhm.
building a life that felt very different from what I was watching at home. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, I imagine that influenced me because I really embraced that independence that the city afforded me. So I loved
Mhm.
learning about different types of people I had exposure to because I
Mm.
think in part it showed me like, what are these other paths that could be
Yeah.
possible. And so yeah, and I'd be remiss if I didn't also say that my parents are responsible, my mother in particular, for
Mm.
making sure I really took academics
Mm.
seriously.
Mhm.
So again, that was, I'm sure, something I didn't necessarily appreciate at the time,
Mhm.
but now I'm really grateful for.
To that point, you went to Stuyvesant High School, academically intense math and science high school in Lower Manhattan. What were you like in high school, and what were you into?
Oh gosh. Well, first, so for those that don't know, Stuyvesant has got to be one of the most unique high school experiences out there. The
Mm.
scale alone is wild. There's like 800 kids per class. You're all crammed
Mm.
into this single 10-story building on the Lower West Side of Manhattan. The most common mode of transit between classes are these 2-story escalators.
Mm.
So students come from all over the city. I was so far out in Queens that my commute was an hour, and my friends told me I lived in the gray space because the MTA map just kind of like stops
Didn't
out
go
there.
there.
Yeah, so it was just out there. But so the student body, it's made up of these like top kids each year. And
Mm.
so I think I had identified as smart
Mhm.
in middle school, thinking that I got good grades or whatever. But then you go to Stuyvesant and you're surrounded by these like wildly talented people. So it's a good
Mm.
little fish, big pond analogy. You get
Mhm.
recalibrated really quickly. So,
Mhm.
but I think like to the question about me, like I think I was the same.
Mm.
The biggest difference I remember was that it was now cool to be smart. So getting good
Mhm.
grades wasn't something to like downplay or pretend you weren't into. And that was surprisingly formative in hindsight.
Mhm.
Uh,
Was that the case at your middle school?
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah, but like the flip side of that is it was a pressure cooker. So workload was
Mhm.
intense, expectations were high. But
Mhm.
same as before, I kind of find my people, like I always think
Mm.
about when I go back to periods of my life, I always see flashes of like who my friends were. And we
Mhm.
similarly had this we're in it together thing that got us through,
Mhm.
whatever. And it just kind of also reinforced how important those friendships were. And it reinforced also how I did love to learn and I was curious about
Mm.
things. And so
Mhm.
that was the first time where I got to really like explore that more.
You were in high school during 9/11 in New York, in Manhattan, right?
Yes. Yes. It
Yeah.
was 3 blocks away from.
Jeez.
So Stuyvesant's on it's on the Lower Side in Tribeca. So we were 3 blocks away. It was my senior year. We definitely were. I mean, in the most literal sense, we did fear for our lives that day. We had to evacuate. We ran uptown through the dust along with the rest of Lower Manhattan, and we really had no idea what was happening. And it was. Yeah, I mean, I guess that actually shaped, not to jump ahead in the story, but I do think that partially shaped where I wanted to go to college and like get out of the city and reinforce some of those former feelings around spending more time in nature, like step on grass occasionally, like breathe
And not
some
be a
fresh air,
target.
not be a target, not worry. There was a little bit of, there's the anxiety that comes from an experience like that, which as a 16 or 17 or however old we were, you don't really realize that at the time. You think you know everything. Like you always think you know everything, but it takes some time to realize that you don't.
Yeah. How did you get home that day?
I didn't. So all of the bridges to everything was closed. So you really couldn't leave the city. So I first walked all the way to the Upper West Side, so like 90th and Central Park West, which is far from downtown, and then eventually walked across to a friend's house on 1st and 71st-ish and stayed overnight. It was wild though. And of course, it was the one day I forgot my cell phone, which later on my mother was very like, why'd you forget your cell phone? By senior year, we had cell phones, and of course, cell phones didn't work, so it didn't really matter. But yeah, it was quite the experience. My best friends and I still call each other on September 11th to this day, at least a text. And eventually, if anyone ever wants to check out a documentary, HBO did do a documentary on the school and the experience of that day.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Oh, what's it called? Do you remember?
It's
okay. We can Google it.
You can Google it. That's what Google's for.
Yeah.
It was something like In the Shadow of the Towers or something like that. If you Google Stuyvesant and HBO, they did a special.
Jeez. Yeah. So in 2002, you follow through on the desire to leave the city and go to Dartmouth to pursue mechanical engineering, but also this really interesting combination of studio art and minor in Spanish. So tell me more about Dartmouth. I have a sense, but tell me more. Why Dartmouth? And then why this combination of engineering, art, and Spanish?
Okay. Well, so let's see. Why Dartmouth comes down to a few things. First, it did have its own ski mountain, the Dartmouth Skiway. And so I could just stop there. But it had some other merits. So beyond that, it was very intentionally, as you said, like the opposite of where I was coming from. I was done with urban. I was drawn to this idea of the close knit in the middle of nowhere, liberal arts, community in New England. It was very colonial. So it checked all those boxes. They also gave me a wonderful financial aid package, which made it possible. And so Dartmouth it was. To your question about that kind of odd academic mix, engineering, art, and Spanish, the honest answer is that I just liked all three. So I thought I might want to be an architect. And so the engineering art combo felt about right. And actually, it was technically an engineering major modified with studio art. And if you did that, you also got out of some of the more brutal engineering prerequisites, like advanced linear algebra. I just didn't have to take it. So there was this joke that it was the pretengineering track. So I just argue it was the smarter path. Okay. But jokes aside, it was it was just a way to engage both sides of my brain, which I liked, the engineering and the art. And then the Spanish minor was, frankly, just I wanted to be able to travel. I had been taking Spanish in high school, and it just felt incredibly practical. I did an abroad term in Spain, and that was it. And so overall, it was the experience I was looking for. The Dartmouth community, again, back to friends and community, it's incredibly close knit. I think it probably has one of the strongest alumni networks for this reason. And I did ski a lot, and it did ultimately bring me to my energy career. So it was a great choice.
I want to hear about that pivot, how it brought you to your energy career. Actually, let me ask you that, and then we can go back to your master's.
Well, actually, that's the same answer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it was one and the same. So I did. So I told you I did this master's thesis. So it's called a culminating experience. Well, actually, the degree was in engineering management, but the thesis itself that you're talking about was that I got involved in converting a combustion engine from a formula car into a hybrid. And
it's like a former race car that you're taking the ICE engine and converting it.
There's a group, organization called Formula SAE, the Formula Society of Automotive Engineers. And now, mind you, I'm from New York City. I don't even like own a car, much less understand like the intricacies of how an internal combustion engine works. But I was like, cool, whatever, we'll do this. And so we were building a small formula style open cockpit race car from scratch. That's what Formula SAE teams did. And so our project, though, was to take the prior year's car and convert it into a hybrid. So a team of 6 of us took this on with very little appreciation for how much work it would actually be. In hindsight, it probably was the first time I experienced entrepreneurship because it wasn't just building the car, which would have definitely been hard enough. We also had to fundraise, manage a budget. We had to source parts. We had to coordinate as a team. The systems had to talk, so on and so on. There was even
this should be the entrepreneurship program for every school.
I genuinely believe that Dartmouth produces really wonderful engineers because they do some of these things and they're just like figure it out. And there was even a marketing component. You had to like explain. And so what really hooked me though was that this idea that high performance and environmental benefit did not have to be at odds. So this was 2006-07 timeframe. The Prius had just come out. So this was pre-Tesla Roadster. And the prevailing assumption was that efficiency equaled boring.
And ugly, sorry.
And ugly, Prius. Yes. Like I've said, like the initial Prius looked like an egg on wheels. It was really something, like with respect to those engineers or whatever. But like, so we kind of obsessed over that. Like, why does that have to be? And we nerded out over the torque curve. I'm really giving myself away here. But like we nerded out over the torque curve of an electric motor. And we were like, why exactly does this have to be boring? It does not make any sense. And so we built the car. It was not boring. It went 0 to 60 in about 4 seconds. I was the lightest person on the team, so I got to do that acceleration run, which was like a wild experience. So here was the problem, and this was like the entrance into the energy industry. In addition to the notion that like high performance doesn't need to be boring, and there's other ways. The problem was we show up to the competition, and we are not allowed to participate. So the rules had been written for traditional fossil fuel cars, and they just simply didn't contemplate anything else.
Wow. How many months had you been working on this leading up to the competition?
Like the whole year, like the whole school year. The competition was in May, so.
And you literally show up to, where are you, like geographically?
We drove from Hanover, New Hampshire to Detroit in Sprinter vans across Canada. So we drive, we bring the car, and we're not allowed to participate. And in hindsight, like I did not realize this at the time, but it became this theme that now I realize I've carried with me throughout, that there's that you can build something that's arguably better and still not be allowed to use it because the rules and the policy hasn't caught up. So thankfully,
we just made the shift from the car to VPPs so fast.
I know, so fast. But like, I really did have this aha moment later. I was like, whoa, like that was my first frustration with policy. Thankfully, though, Dartmouth was equally frustrated, and the school worked with Formula SAE, who was also wonderful, the organization, and they created a separate Formula hybrid competition, which universities from around the world to this day compete in. So yeah, and don't tell. So we named the car Tuna for reasons that like I have no idea. But so that car was a source of pride. But even more than that was that this competition and the new set of rules and students understanding that hybrid technologies can be the best of both worlds and learning about electric cars. That's the thing that to this day I was pretty excited about.
I love that. Yeah. Change the rules. I think it's a good early lesson. Understand them.
I didn't even realize I was learning it at the time, but yes.
Yeah. So then leading up to finishing your master's, because of this car competition, you're getting recruited by Tesla, but you just decide to join this little startup at the time called EnerNOC. Tell me about leading up to graduation, like what was happening and how did you end up finding and choosing EnerNOC?
Yeah, it's funny to think about in hindsight. Like at the time, it was actually a very straightforward decision. I did not agonize over it. I did not say like, what will happen if Tesla becomes like the company that it is that we all know today.
Nobody knew.
No one knew. Like, and I was completely taken by the EnerNOC business model. So the idea that you could pay businesses to use less energy, and in doing so, avoid building new power plants. I just was like, it just clicked. And so that the business model innovation was something I wanted to be part of, not to mention like how many businesses out there pay their customers. So I was like, this is too good to be true. I don't understand. And then I met the team. The team was amazing. And so EnerNOC it was. But the other factor that I'm remembering is that I had done an internship the summer before at iRobot, which is the company that makes those vacuuming robots that everybody knows. And the experience was very clarifying because I learned with absolute certainty that I did not want to be a mechanical engineer. Like, no way. So I loved the systems. I loved problem solving. But that taught me that I did not want to spend the rest of my career designing like individual pieces of hardware. I just was bored to tears with that, despite the fact that the internship was amazing. Like, we're literally building robots. The people were wonderful. I just was like, I was just disinterested. And then so EnerNOC was there. It sat at that intersection of technology, markets, systems, impact, and Tesla was exciting, but it felt like I would learn more. And I just was drawn to the EnerNOC choice.
Do you know what about you made you drawn to the systems work rather than the kind of component-based work?
I have no idea. Maybe people listening to this pod can tell me later. I don't know. I mean, and I'm sure like you'd say mechanical engineering is almost all systems-based work. Like, you design a part and it needs to fit as part of the system. There's something about like the magnitude of the electricity grid and the fact that you can be in the industry and still not know maybe even like the half of it. And it's such a core human basis of like life and like, not to be over dramatic, but like everything these days relies on electricity, and most people drive by the lines and wires and don't even think twice. I think I just like was really drawn to that.
So you're at EnerNOC for 7 years before you moved to the battery startup Ambri, where you were director of corp dev for 3 years. What did you learn from both of those early career experiences, and how did they shape your view of the energy industry?
Whew, okay, let's see. So 7 years. So 7 years at EnerNOC. Let me start by saying it also coincided with a period of incredible growth for the company itself. And so that taught me a number of things. I'll start with EnerNOC, then I'll move to Ambri. So first, I loved being part of a growth company. I like building things. I guess you could say once an engineer, always an engineer. But because the company grew so quickly, it was probably around 100 something when I joined. So they were established, to be clear, but still had a startup vibe. To well over 1,000 while I was there. Wow. I was able to take on a lot of responsibility early. So by the end of my time there, I was leading a team of 30 something people, an international team. And I had experienced the fun of building and leading teams, which is rare and attributable to their growth. I also learned how hard it is to be a public company when large chunks of revenue are tied to the crazy energy markets we're in with volatile pricing. Amen. And EnerNOC they were a bit of a category breaker. So sometimes it was compared to IPPs, clean tech companies, utilities, like that lack of a comp made it hard for the street to understand the business despite fundamentals being strong. So yeah, and then like who, again, let's come back to who. So who you work with matters. And so that group was incredibly smart, wildly capable, some of my best friends to this day. And the alumni network is incredible. You go to any clean tech company today and you see EnerNOC alumni. So it's not, so I wouldn't be surprised if one day it's taught as a case study as not just a clean tech success, but in the hiring practices that they had. And then lastly, from a product perspective, because I like product, EnerNOC also taught me that the best solutions aren't one size fits all, I guess is how I would say it. So customers had very, very different capabilities and appetites for participation in the demand response programs at the time. And I was like intrigued by the more sophisticated ways of supporting the grid. And then that was what led me to Ambri, because I thought, energy storage, they can do all the things. Like, let's go figure that out. So that brought me to Ambri. I had known the team, also EnerNOC alum, at least a couple of them. And so they were this like small, and I wanted smaller again. I was like, all right, let's do the startup thing again. So Ambri was small. It was technology spun out of an MIT lab, a new take on long duration energy storage So this was 2014 timeframe. At the time, that was maybe 4 10 hours duration. And so I spent a few years really understanding storage as a grid solution, especially solar plus storage use cases. So we looked at islands and places where solar plus storage would just make tremendous amounts of sense. And if you had told me back then that today lithium ion batteries would be hitting $100 per kilowatt hour, I would have like fallen out of my chair, because the use cases at the price points that we see today in storage are crazy. Ultimately, the story there ends. The technology, it wasn't ready to commercialize at a pace where I just was not useful to them at a certain point. So I learned that, one, time to market is extremely important, like just like getting it out there. And then two, I had to like really admit to myself that it was important that I was in the center of the problem that the company was solving. So at Ambri, I was on the business side. I actually wasn't the engineer. And I just couldn't help with the biggest problems, like material science. I just was not useful. And so, so I learned all those things. I also learned that there was no chance I was leaving energy. I was in love. And that I still really saw all this opportunity in the demand side and in customer-sided flexible loads.
So the idea for Voltus came in part from a Supreme Court case in 2016. What was that decision, and what did it spark in you and your eventual co-founders?
The decision was 2 4-letter acronyms. So it was FERC versus EPSA in 2016. And it was a really, really big deal, even though it didn't get much attention outside the energy world. I've actually been asked if there's some like energy specific Supreme Court. Would I tell this story sometime? I'm like, no, like the Supreme Court, as in like the Supreme Court of the United States. So at a high level, the Supreme Court in that case affirmed that demand response could participate in wholesale electricity markets and be compensated at the same level as generation. So in other words, using less energy at the right time would be treated as supply. Sounds simple, but was pretty landmark that it affirmed that participation, and it affirmed FERC's jurisdiction over that. So it wasn't just a settling a legal question. It was this like philosophical one as well. And so it's like the grid doesn't actually care where the electrons come from or whether they're producing more power or consuming less power. And so that decision then gave certainty to something that had been hanging over the industry. And Voltus really grew out of that moment. I mean, we grew out of a number of moments, but we saw at that time it had been an overhang. There was EnerNOC had now been acquired by Enel, and so there was this space poised for growth. And we started the company, and we said, all right, from the beginning, we're going to do 2 things and focus on them throughout. And the first was the customer has to always come first, always, and never lose sight of that fact, because if it didn't create real tangible value for customers, it didn't matter what we built, it just would not last. And then second was, and these things go hand in hand, but we needed an almost maniacal focus on innovation and technology, because we believed that being deeply technology driven was the way to deliver the best financial outcomes for customers. So again, if the customer's coming first, it was like number 1 was number 1, and then number 2 enabled number 1, and that was really it. So if we stayed obsessed with the customer and we built the best possible offering, we felt confident that other things would follow. But the Supreme Court thing was a catalyst at the time.
Before we go deeper into the company, so the Supreme Court case is decided, and then the founding CEO of Voltus, Greg Dixon, calls you. And what does he say?
Okay, so this might be the shortest answer of the whole interview. That conversation basically went like this. Greg calls me and he says, hey, or actually he probably says, yo, amigo. He goes, do you want to start a company?
And you knew Greg from EnerNOC?
I knew Greg from EnerNOC. Okay. And I said, no.
Had you ever thought of starting a company? Like, you're working for these startups. Like, had that crossed your mind? No.
It had not crossed my mind. And so I said, no, that was pretty much it. Like, that was the first conversation.
That was the whole conversation.
That was it. That was the first conversation. So obviously things shifted. And what shifted for me was realizing that Voltus actually combined like all of the things I'd learned and loved in my earlier career. So it was, okay, so you're going to work with an incredible team. You're going to be central to the primary problem we're trying to solve. We're going to be building not just stuff, but like product, teams, processes, real
Mm-hmm.
customer solutions. And it's going to be a growth company. It's going to be focused on the part of the industry that you, Dana, find most interesting,
Mm-hmm.
both from a like opportunity point of view, but also just like an intellectual one.
Mm-hmm.
And so at some point, I had to admit that I was just like wrong.
How did you figure all that out? Was that you on your own? Was that Greg trying to convince you?
No, Greg deserves a lot of credit here. He was persistent. He had a
Uh-huh.
clear vision. He pushed me to really see what this could become. I'm sure I spoke to other people. I spoke to my husband at the time. In fairness to me, I was pregnant with my first. Greg didn't know that. It was that early. And so it was a potentially complicating set of factors. But yes, that was pretty much the story. It was like, this is an opportunity that doesn't come around multiple times in one's lifetime. It has all the makings of all the things that you love. And the rest is the rest is history, they say.
The rest is history that we will tell on the show. So, okay, so you change your mind, but you're pregnant with your first. What happens from there?
What happens from there? Well, I'm sure pregnancy brain set in because I'm like, sometimes I struggle with the sequence of events. But we officially launched in 2016. We had actually 4 co-founders. So there was Greg and then also Matt Plant and Neil Lakin. And we launched the company and we had a tremendous amount of fun working together. And we went on from there. Yeah, I mean, I think I've kind of lost your initial question on that.
Oh, that's okay. No, just thinking about the timeline. So, what changed for you? And then so you do decide to launch the company together, the 4 of you in 2016. You're pregnant at the time, and then you have your baby, and then you leave the company, I think, intending for that to be a permanent.
So Sasha was born in February of 2016. So she's turning 10 next year, as is the company.
Oh my gosh.
It is crazy, right? So I have like 3 children. I have her, I have a younger son, Adrian, and I have the company. So I actually stepped back at the time. It's a lot to have a baby and start a company. So I wasn't completely wrong in my initial answer to Greg.
Not wrong at all.
And it was probably sometime later that year. So it was maybe another like 9 months after that, whatever cloud I was in, which you can tell because I can't even get the story timeline straight. I actually went and I worked at First Fuel for a couple of months. I was director of product marketing there. And it just wasn't, it wasn't Voltus. It was a great team, great work, awesome commute. Got to bike just a couple miles to work back and forth. And it just wasn't that once in a lifetime thing. So called Greg back up and admitted I was wrong once again. And off we went.
When you made that decision to leave Voltus after having started it, fairly recently, was that a hard decision? And did you think it was a permanent decision, or did you think you would come back to it at some point, or you just didn't know?
I don't know that I knew. Everything felt hard then. So it was a hard decision. I don't know that I knew. And I never thought I was like leaving completely. So I did stay on. I was helping like advise. I just knew that I couldn't give it my absolute all that was required of a co-founder of a company at that stage. And so in some ways it was very honest, but I don't know that I knew how the story would end.
Yeah, makes sense. And then in those early days after you came back, what was really fun and kind of intuitive about building Voltus, and what was way more challenging than you all thought it would be?
I think the most fun was, so I had known Greg and Matt from EnerNOC, and I knew Neil through an Ambri connection actually. And so it was kind of like hanging out with friends all day. We worked well together. We were very clear on what we wanted to build. And we could be direct and honest with each other because of that. So like, I think that matters a lot in the founding days of the company. You don't waste time. You just like say the thing and move on. And so then you layer on top of that, like the opportunity kept getting more compelling as we dug in. And so that part all felt easy, even if the work itself was hard, which brings me to the other part of your question, which was the work was hard. Starting a company is hard. And while I can't speak for from other experience, I've only ever started one company. I do think it is especially hard just my hot take, I think it is especially hard to start a company in the energy industry. There's like maybe other industries rival it, but like it is hard. And we also made things harder for ourselves in a very in a very intentional way, because from the beginning we decided we're gonna operate in every market across North America, and that's our table stakes MVP. And so we didn't want customers. That was grounded in, we didn't want customers working with one provider in one market and another provider somewhere else. And so our starting vision was basically, let's be everywhere all at once. And so that is not simple, makes it harder. I remember explaining to Neil once, who didn't come from this space the way Matt and Greg did, that each RTO and ISO essentially speaks a different language. And I could like see his eyes start to bug out because these markets each have their own rules, their own quirks, their own logic. And we were like, all right, let's build a scalable technology-driven platform in an industry that makes that next to impossible. And so it was hard. And then like I had this baby, and like I just remember being like, all right, I am in it right now. And there were definitely moments where I wondered about whether my sanity level. Yeah.
I appreciate that honesty. I think especially for people who have babies, especially women who are in that position, either as founders or just trying to do anything hard in work.
It's all hard.
Yeah, I relate. In hindsight, did you think that was the right decision to try to go to every market at once, or would you wish you had done it differently if you could do it again?
For some reason, that was always very clear, never questioned, and I think it was absolutely the right decision. Because if you think about like our job is to make this stuff simple and to keep the customer first and to build with technology. And it's just like so squarely right in the center of that bullseye that they can't be having different, the customer doesn't want to know that one market calls it this 3-letter acronym and another one calls it, and they just don't care. It's not only that they don't care, they like actively don't want to know.
Actively don't.
Right. You know what I mean? Like, that is not their business. That is our business. And so, I think it's also very hard to go from one market and then try to like add markets to that. Because from a product point of view, we built that platform thinking, okay, let's like build modularly so that we can be in all these markets.
Yeah. How did you think about the business model early on? Like, what was it from day one, and has it remained consistent?
Yeah, like this is another one. I feel that, and maybe it was the EnerNOC experience, but we were very clear on the business model from the beginning. So our customers fall into these two main groups. On the one side, you have the energy users, which are the businesses or the organizations or the residents with flexible load. And on the other side, you have grid operators and utilities who need dependable, dispatchable resources. And we sat in the middle and monetized that flexibility on the customer side into something the grid actually values. So it's like we take the energy things and we put them in the markets that get the energy payments. And so important, like even though we were building a technology company, I think we always understood that at the end of the day, the product we were selling was not necessarily the software itself. The product is the thing your sales team goes out and talks to customers about. So for us, that was participation in these markets and getting paid for that. So it was always by and large a revenue share or a value share with those end users. That was the product. And everything else we built was to make customers' lives simple and deliver that value.
So the utility is paying you, and you are sharing that value with those that are bringing the DERs to market, be it, EV charging or thermostats or solar.
Exactly. So it's anything that results in reducing the usage from the utility meter, be it direct just demand response load flexibility, the thermostats, the EVs, the on-site generation, the battery storage, all of that falls into that category.
Got it. So Voltus was bootstrapped before raising a Series A in 2017. How did you think about capital in the early days of the company? And what did those decisions that you all made teach you about fundraising?
I'd say early on, we were very focused on controlling our own destiny. In fact, after we raised our Series A, we genuinely did not plan to raise more capital. We saw a clear path, like let's build a profitable business, and we liked the discipline and the optionality that came with that. That changed during COVID. So this is a few years in, and as everybody listening knows, all of a sudden the world was in a complete state of uncertainty, right? Uncertainty is the worst because, and we had customers going out of business. Commercial real estate was sitting empty. Some customers were told by their state governments that they could only produce PPE or other critical products to the point where they wouldn't even talk to us, let alone think about the contracts they might have had with us or their energy spend and how we could help. It just like, you get tunnel vision. At the same time, people were working from home and the load patterns were all shifting and moving in places. And so it was just like impossible to forecast with confidence what was going to happen. And so we realized at that point, the prudent thing to do was to strengthen that balance sheet. And that was the defensive side where we then said, all right, we're going to actually raise some more money. But we also had real clarity. So it wasn't just defensive. We knew the business worked. We were a few years in. We knew how to grow it. We could see that with more capital, we could accelerate that growth and impact. We had this like clear use of proceeds where we were genuinely excited. We can do more, have a greater impact with a faster pace. So having raised capital a number of times or observed people raising capital, the two things I come back to are like, one, and this was first told to me by Phil Giudice, who is the CEO of Ambri, like, don't raise money when you need to raise money. And two, like this is a Dana special, which is like only raise money when you're really excited about what you're going to do with it. So it's like, it makes it much more of a strategic choice, not a reactive one. And frankly, it makes it more fun.
Coming up, Dana shares how Voltus approached product development in the early days. But first, a word from Powerhouse Innovation. What It Takes has always focused on the founder shaping the future of energy and industry. Behind the scenes, Powerhouse Innovation, our sister company to Powerhouse Ventures, partners with corporations, utilities, and investors to source and evaluate emerging technologies and pinpoint the opportunities that matter most. Our clients include Google, Mitsui, DNV, and more. Powerhouse Innovation has built an industry-leading network, data foundation, and expert team to generate value for our clients. By staying close to startups and expert stakeholders, we give clients direct access to top founders and a real-time read on market shifts. Backed by a PhD-led team of experts, we help our clients source and evaluate opportunities, clarify priorities, and make faster, more confident decisions. Recent engagements have spanned solid-state transformers, edge computing, accelerated interconnection for data centers, and next-gen geothermal. This year, Powerhouse Innovation began working with new clients Black & Veatch, a global EPC leading the development of human-critical infrastructure, and Rio Tinto, one of the world's largest mining companies. We are supporting their teams as they maintain their competitive advantage across topics such as energy and storage solutions for co-located data centers and AI for materials discovery and development. If your organization is looking to accelerate its innovation and investment goals, we'd love to connect. Email us at hello@powerhouse-innovation.co to get in touch. And now back to the show. Tell me about the early platform. Like, walk me through, you were leading product. What did product development look like in those early days?
Okay, so let's see. So the platform, if you think about the platform exists to do one thing really well, which is take flexibility, again, on that customer side of the meter and turn it into something on the grid side that the grid can use reliably and that it pays for. So that sounds simple, but in practice, it means a few hard things have to happen at the same time. You need to understand customers' operations deeply. We work with 40, 50 something different industries. You need to interface with a lot of very different markets and programs. That's all those different languages you need to speak. And then the technology needs to perform reliably when the grid actually needs it. We've always really stressed, like, as a North Star principle, we need to deliver on our commitments. So in the early days, product development was, let's see, it was probably like pragmatic is a word that comes to mind. And we did not start by saying, let's build a platform. In fact, I remember a conversation a couple years in where we were like, is this a platform? Yes, we are a platform. But what we started by saying was, what do we need to build so that this customer can participate in this market and get paid and have a good experience doing it? And so the first developments were very close to the market. It's like, how do you enroll, dispatch, calculate performance, payments? These were the table stakes things that if we could not do that, like nothing else mattered. And so we were very intentional about like, here's the common foundation underneath all of that. So that goes back to the question you had about, do we regret or did we ever question being in all markets all the time? I think no, because from a product point of view, it forced us to look at all these different types of markets and different customers. They look really different on the surface. And then our job was that, how do you identify the underlying concepts that are actually the same? So on the market side, there's capacity, there's reserves, there's energy. Like they're going to get called slightly different things. And someone will remind me that not all markets have capacity, but like the gist of that was the same. And then there's performance compensation. And so early product work, we talked about productizing the essential elements of demand response. And it was abstracting those concepts so that we could adapt as the rules changed. I also remember sometimes the team would like lament when rules would change. God, we just built this thing and like now the rules are changing, or the customer changed or something shifted. And so we started taking that and actually leaning into that as a strength. We were like, let's make that our superpower, where we're the ones that are nimble, that we can get to market fastest, and let's actually design for complexity and for change. So I think that was that. And then back to like the first principle of customer, we tied product development to the customer experience and spent a lot of time trying to make it like really simple and worth it for them.
What were the first markets you chose to enter, and how did you go about making that decision? And at the time, what exactly were you selling? And what did all those choices reveal about what was working about Voltus and what maybe were some of the weaknesses at the time?
Okay. Let me know if I missed any of that. I'm going to try. Like, that was like 8 questions in one.
It really was.
All right.
It really was.
So first market. So I mentioned we scoped the platform from day one to work across all the markets, but there did have to be a first. And very early on, I would have guessed actually that it would have been Alberta up in Canada. And the reason was a little product driven. We designed that MVP. When we designed the MVP, Alberta had some of the most stringent technical requirements. So for example, we designed for 30-second telemetry reads because that was the Alberta way. That was the highest bar we could find. And so that plus we saw some really good pricing. It was really relatively fast to get to market. You didn't have to wait for like the next delivery year. Brought a lot of like product focus onto Alberta. However, there was also another country, and it like quickly became apparent that it wasn't going to be the first. And MISO actually was going to be the first. It became apparent that that opportunity was there. So MISO is a 125 gigawatt system peak that had basically no demand response. There was maybe some utility programs, but no aggregators whatsoever. And we believed it was a matter of when, not if, the prices in MISO would rise. And so the idea that we could bring customers access to an entirely new revenue opportunity that they had just like never been brought before also felt like a competitive advantage of being everywhere, like truly everywhere. So we would find customers that had been doing demand response for years, maybe were under contract with somebody else in a more established market, who were willing to work with us in MISO as our first business with them. And then we could expand. So it helped us with our land and expand strategy with customer acquisition. At the end, I think it was actually a tie. We went live because they did have the delivery year requirement. We probably went live the same day in both MISO and PJM.
Oh, wow.
But the underlying logic was the same. It was like build for the hardest requirements and then go where the
Everything else
opportunity
will
is
be
greatest.
And any revelations in terms of Voltus's strengths and weaknesses at the time when you did enter PJM and MISO?
Let's see. I think let's see. We were very disciplined about that philosophy around like obsessing over the value, like not to sound boring, but I think like we were pretty consistent there. But that meant we needed to skate to the proverbial puck of where those markets were going. And I think that was a strength where we kind of saw, all right, the MISO market is going to become a thing. Prices will one day, we didn't know exactly when, pop. And the decision to lean into the complexity, that also was a good decision. How do we layer product offerings? It can be we layer all these different ways a customer can participate. And it sounds complicated, but when we talk to the customer, it's almost like choose your own adventure. And so leaning into all of that complexity, I think, was a strength. Understanding we had to be in all the different markets was a strength, and all that worked well, because here we sit today, the markets are heading towards more complexity, and our job was to keep it simple. What proved harder than expected was that, I know that policy can be slow. I know that they don't happen overnight, and sometimes even I'm still taken aback by like the glacier pace that sometimes things move at. Last 6 to 12 months aside, which I think have been the fastest I've ever seen policies evolve, I still found it very difficult when we would think things would happen and it felt like we were banging our head against the wall, and they just did not happen at the pace that we wanted them to.
On the product side, what did technical development look like in this time? How did the tech evolve? What kind of challenges were you running into?
The hardest part to like name it is that our tech stack was very like sprawling. So if you think about, it's not many companies that have controls integrations and hardware in the field and like payment systems to customers and forecasting engines, like and. So it's a really enviable amount of important things to work on, but it makes it very hard to prioritize. So when I was in the product role, I would joke that like the roadmap was just a list of things we hadn't done yet. And our job was just to like do them in the right order, to do them well, to move as quickly as possible. But the challenge of allocating scarce resources to do the right things in the right order was definitely, to me, like the defining evolution of how of the biggest challenges we have. And we have them to this day. Like, how do we deploy resources to do all of the things we want to do in the right order?
Speaking of resources, you've raised about 66 million, including a 31 million Series C in 2021, which you mentioned earlier. Who has backed you along the way? Which rounds have been the easiest and hardest? What do you think other founders should know about raising capital?
Well, our A rounds was, we had an A, B, and C. Our A rounds was Ajax and Prelude Ventures. Our B was NGP, and our C was Activate Capital. I'd say like, this is not just because I'm guessing my board members are going to listen. I swear it. But I think I think we are incredibly lucky with our board. We also have 2 independents, and we get a lot out of their support, which is like when thinking about a board or board composition or independence, and you didn't necessarily ask this, but someone asked me this actually just yesterday. A board should be both like appropriately critical and supportive at the same time. Like you want them to really, really, really push you and not hold back if they have something that they think you could be doing better. So.
And you're right that so much of fundraising, it's not just the capital, it's the people that you get on your board who are helping guide you and the company that matter almost more than the capital itself.
Yeah. Really think about who is investing in you and who is going to sit on your board, and not just like what money they're going to give you.
Beyond capital raised, what would you like listeners to know about Voltus's traction to date?
Okay, well, so you already know that we're in all the major North American power markets. We've got tens of thousands of end-use customers, over 8 gigawatts of flexible capacity, which for scale, because I like always kind of saying like for scale, that's roughly equivalent to 8 nuclear power plants. So it's huge. We participate. So that's like the size of it. But then like that's nice. Like, so how does that matter? What's the impact? We participate in thousands of grid events every year, which at this point means we're delivering energy somewhere at some volume every day. And soon we'll say it's like every hour. It's often every hour of every day. And I published that statistic on LinkedIn this past summer. Like, hey, do you know we're actually dispatched every day? And the most surprising thing about that was that it was it truly took off. It was probably like my most successful post in the sense that people did not know, and I was surprised that they didn't know. And so I like sharing that because it has moved this category of what we're doing and load flexibility from being just a backup thing that is called on occasion to being really, really central. It's not fringe, it is core, it is backbone. And so we're really proud of that. And then that translates to impact. So if you're being used every day, like, so what does that actually mean? And we measure this a number of ways. Let's talk customer first. So this year alone, we'll deliver somewhere in the mid 100 millions of value to the customers. That's a lot of value. That's why they keep doing this. That's why they work with us. That's why it's okay to control their loads sometimes very frequently. From a climate perspective, we also not talked about that much. That's roughly, it's just shy of 500,000. So it's like 450,000 metric tons of net avoided CO2 just this year. I don't actually have the all-time stats. So it's just this year. And then the EPA says that's the equivalent of about 500 million pounds of coal, which is the one thing I looked up before this pod. And at that scale, though, I was like, wow, like 500 million pounds of coal. Like my brain, it starts to be hard to process. Like I feel this way about outer space, just as an aside, where it's like beyond the capacity of my brain to actually contextualize something that size. And so I just concluded that is cool. And that like that,
agreed,
like when you,
agreed.
Right. So, but it's meaningful. And a lot of people do this work because of that impact.
Yeah, yeah. Back to your point on the business model, I think it's fun to just let that sink in that your value prop is revenue. You're like, that's what you're offering.
Right. We're not out there like, hey, use this software or do this or whatever. Like it's great. The software, for example, gives real-time energy data to our businesses and they use that and that's valuable to them, but that's not like the thing you start with. So,
yeah, it's a fun value prop.
Yeah.
In January of last year, so in 2024, you transitioned from Chief Product Officer to CEO, taking over from Greg Dixon, the founding CEO, who had originally called you to get you to join and you told him no. Walk me through what catalyzed that shift.
Yeah, I guess in many ways this is a question for Greg, but I'll do my best. So Greg had been in the forefront of the industry for 20 years or so, right? He was at EnerNOC, and he had led the company Voltus through substantial growth in our earlier years. And I think the timing was right. He felt confident in my leadership as what was best for the next phase. So it wasn't like a completely new thing. We had been talking about it for a while and we planned to have Greg step down at the very beginning of 2024. And so internally, the team kind of knew towards the end of 23. And ultimately, I guess the catalyst, to use that word, was that we were entering a new chapter. And so the timing was right. And I think for me, it felt like a natural continuation of a lot of the work I was already doing. And I can't answer for Greg, but I think for him, it also just felt like the timing was right for him to step down and that he had carried us to that, through that first very successful chapter or two.
Did you want to be CEO?
Gosh, like I didn't think I wanted to be, but I did want to be. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Like I think the most honest answer is I didn't know that I wanted to be because I loved my job. I thought being co-founder and chief product officer was the absolute bee's knees of what you could possibly achieve professionally if you're me. Like I get to be a co-founder and shape the business and influence the team and build this thing. And I get to focus on product, which was like what I loved. And so it took me a minute to be like, well, if we are a product-led company and now I'm just I'm still doing all that. We're still product-led. I'm still building what I love. So that's what I meant by it was kind of a natural continuation. I just hadn't articulated it to myself. It was like the rest, once again, Greg was right. It was like the rest of the world knew a little before I did.
Just about every founder on What It Takes, like literally 90+% have been within months, weeks, days, or even hours of closing their doors. How close has Voltus come?
I like being in the top 10%, Emily.
It might be less. It might be less than that.
No, I think this is like All right. So I guess like the honest answer is going to be a little less dramatic than people expect, maybe more realistic. So we were never hours or days or months from closing our doors. There were
Not
definitely
even months.
periods. I mean, I guess like months.
Sure,
like if
sure,
you,
sure,
like, sure. Like,
right. But not like, less than
but not
3.
like, oh, next month, right? Like, or like 2
Yeah.
months. Like we were not having that, like, okay, like we have a cash out date of
Right.
like something like where you were like, oh, wow. But okay, so but like, don't get me wrong. There were definitely periods where things felt very fragile and where like a small number of decisions going the wrong way could have materially changed that outcome. So we said energy's hard. There are moments where we had to be extremely disciplined, and we knew that. And maybe because we had all come from, this was not our first company. Like we had some battle wounds, we had some scar tissue, and so we knew that sometimes being slower on hiring and being very careful with capital and cash is king, and saying no to things that would have like felt easier, more comfortable in the short term. We were very, very disciplined. But then we mentioned COVID, so that was the most acute example where it's like, that was sobering because, like, again, we had customers shutting down. Who knew where the world was going? And we needed to make sure we had enough optionality, because if one or two things, we were too close to the sun. So that was where it was like, all right, we don't want to be at the whim of one or two things not going our way.
Yeah.
And then that goes back to like raise capital when you don't need it. So that was, I think, the catalyst for that there. And we also were fortunate that we're not like very capitally intensive as a company. So we built resilience in early.
Yeah.
We were very scrappy. We focused on real revenue. We stayed nimble on expenses. I haven't mentioned it. We're fully remote. So we're not like, we can kind of ramp up and ramp down, and we're not, we're an all remote. We're an all distributed energy resources company that can ramp up and down and be flexible and be nimble. We're the ultimate asset.
I love it.
So,
embody the model.
Yeah. And I think the last thing that makes us fortunate, and this is not necessarily because like, this is just the nature of our business, is it can perform in both economic downturns and upswings. So if you think about like paying businesses, right? When you have an economic downturn and things get tight, more businesses are naturally going to focus on reducing their OPEX, including their energy spend. And so we can kind of survive the ups and the downs, and we're pretty durable when it comes to riding those ebbs and flows. So I think that's, as much as I want to just be in the top 1%, I think that's the honest answer.
That's great. In September of this year, Voltus introduced your Bring Your Own Capacity program, the BYOC, which I love the term. Tell me more about the program.
Okay. I actually want to go a little longer than like the 2 minutes on this one and walk down memory lane here a little bit on this. And I do think, but as an aside, before we start, I do think that we coined the term. I know we didn't coin the term BYO, obviously. I did go to college. But I think in terms of like capacity, we were out there saying this for a while. But let me actually go
trademark
back in time.
Let it be known.
Yeah, well, technically there was a trademark in our press release, but like, let me go back. More jokes aside, let me go back, because I do think like it helps to go back for me and to the early 2020s, which is not that long ago. But when you say it that way, it feels
like a long time ago.
It feels like a long time ago. But for those in the industry, you'll recall that all the big tech companies were talking a lot about 24/7 clean energy goals, and there was 2030. There was the 24/7 compact. 2030 was looming as this like big deadline. And at the time, it always struck me as odd. Not the ambition. I loved that. I loved the focus on climate. But the idea that a large tech company would spend, or any company, I'm not picking on tech, would spend enormous amounts of capital to make its own footprint perfectly 24/7 clean in isolation. And so there was this like broader benefit to society perspective that was missing, because it's actually a wildly inefficient use of capital. Like if you're just, we'll keep going with big tech. If you're just big tech and you have X million dollars to spend, there are many ways to deploy that capital that have a far greater impact than just building like a self-contained 24/7 power solution at that single site. So the overall environmental ROI or the affordability and the reliability of it, it just like didn't pencil to me relative to other solutions. outside of that single facility. And I promise I have a point with bring your own capacity. But so that thinking led us to what we call our carbon response product. So we went out and we started pitching the idea that instead of chasing this like perfection and isolation, large corporates could pay us to dispatch flexibility across our portfolio during the dirtiest hours of the grid. So we optimized, it was demand response, but optimized around carbon intensity and, hey, when is the grid using coal that hour? So that pilot was a $2 million pilot. It actually just put out a press release about that too. Because it was kind of, we reached some nice things that we could talk about. I like talking about results. That ended up being though the kernel of what later became what we coined as bring your own capacity. Because the idea was hyperscalers, big tech hyperscalers, many of the same companies can fund capacity alongside their load growth, but it doesn't have to be on site, and it definitely doesn't have to be 24/7. And I think so in a bring your own capacity deal, they're funding flexible capacity, they being the hyperscalers. So load flexibility, storage, other resources across a broader adjacent region through one of our VPPs. It doesn't have to be within the fence line of the data center itself. And so I get very passionate about this topic because I think I see a lot of today's data center conversation about not harming the grid or self-generation or self-supply, self-sufficiency, basically like don't make things worse. And that's understandable, but I would challenge us that that's actually a really low bar. Like, why not? Hey, could you also make things better? You guys have the largest balance sheets in the history of the world, right? So the bring your own capacity concept came from it came from that kernel of the idea of, can you marry those balance sheets with the largest problems out there that incidentally they care about a whole ton. And it allows the data center investment to give back. So local businesses, homeowners can participate. Storage can be deployed. Like just smear storage around the whole area where there's a constraint. Like I imagine like a peanut butter knife. Like let's just put it everywhere.
Batteries everywhere.
Batteries everywhere. And so then capacity shows up when the grid is stressed. It lowers system costs, improves reliability, all the stuff we talk about, but not just for the data center, it's for everyone. And so it widens the, like, bring your own capacity versus bring your own generation. Bring your own generation has this notion of build your own power plant, and bring your own capacity to me, or like fund a VPP. It just widens the solution set so that they don't only need to serve the data center is not serving just itself. It's actually helping to make the grid more affordable, reliable, etc. So that's my slightly impassioned story for you.
And you all are partnering with Brian Janis and Cloverleaf, who we've had on the show. Is that right?
Yes, you had him on recently. That was nice. Yes, yeah, and he coined the term, the bit-watt spread, because and to me that's like there is such a delta between what you get out on the compute side versus what you want to pay for those watts that are going to fund it, that let's take that money and let's do some real good with it. Let's get out that peanut butter knife.
Turning to what was maybe a less fun topic for you all, can you share more on your perspective on the recent Voltus settlement with FERC and MISO? It sounds like MISO was your first customer, so maybe particularly tricky. What led to it? What did it resolve? What were your takeaways?
Of course, hard pivot. All right.
Yeah, indeed.
So no, it's all good. So the settlement relates to the period from 2016 to 2020, where we were working, as we've discussed, to bring demand response into MISO for the first time. So at that point, the rules were evolving. We ultimately settled on what was an allegation of a tariff violation, the specifics of which would probably bore many of your listeners to tears. So I'll just hit on a couple of key points, though. And you asked about my takeaways. First, we're really proud of the work we did to bring, or that we keep doing, to bring DR to markets where it didn't previously exist, including in MISO. We celebrate customer payment milestones. We obsess over the value, like for a reason. And so just like first thing to say is we are proud of that work, and it's great to see how much participation MISO has today and how far the market's come. More directly on the settlement, under the terms, we don't admit or deny to any, we neither admit nor deny to any wrongdoing in connection with that tariff or the way we participated under it. But I'll answer personally, like what I personally took away from it was again, how important clear and transparent rules are in the market, and that it's not just the market's responsibility. Like it doesn't, when there's a gray area or when it's not clear or transparent, it's not, it doesn't just sit with the grid operators. Like market participants also have a role to play in helping ensure the rules are clear and consistently applied. So in a lot of our policy work falls into that bucket today. So that was like, again, personally, I think that was like a good kind of key takeaway for me. And then most importantly, from a whole company point of view, the settlement allowed us to turn the page and put our attention back into the business, which was what we wanted to do and where all the fun is and where all the impact is. And so quite glad that's behind us.
Turning to some more personally reflective questions, how has your leadership style changed since you founded Voltus?
Well, I hope it's changed a little bit, meaning I hope I've learned something in the past 10 years, put those learnings to work. I guess like I think about it I think about leadership as like one, outcomes and impact, and then like culture and people. So on outcomes first, I think early on I was probably more hands-on and deep in the details. I'm still an engineer at heart. My team listening is probably like, "You're still deep in the details," and I'm definitely very oriented around results and impact. So results being the ultimate currency. And at this point, I probably annoy the team because we talk about the say-do ratio a lot, which is say what you're going to do, like just you say what you're going to do and then do what you say. And like that hasn't changed. What I think maybe has changed is how I show up at this point. Like I do realize I'm no longer the expert. I've always been an expert on something, and now I'm no longer the expert on like pretty much anything, like anything. And so I know sometimes just enough to be kind of dangerous. But so my role is more like, let's set direction, prioritize, make sure we're actually delivering. And then in order to do all that other bucket, which is culture and people, we ask our team, is Voltus the best professional experience of your life? I genuinely want
what
people
a great
to
question.
love. Yeah. And you'd be surprised. Like sometimes people say like, no, I once started a business and that was so rewarding. And it's like, that's great. And you'd be surprised. It's something in the high 70s consistently. People say like, yes, this is the best professional experience of my life, because we genuinely want people to love working here. It definitely influences how I try to lead and how we like think about decisions, the whole team. And it shows up in being also intentional about our culture. We're all remote, so we have to be very intentional about the culture we create, and in communicating like why, not just what, because no one really is motivated to motivate folks. You have to say like, we're going here. Here's the vision, and here's why, not just like what. And so, so we have a set of values. We talk about being bright, gritty, and good. And I think you need all three. Like people always want to hire.
What are the three? Bright,
gritty, and good. So people it's always very clear you want to hire bright people. But if they don't have grit or like, or mission alignment, it is not going to work. So at the end of the day, the most fun is had. We also talk about has fun as a team. The most fun, the most impact is when you get a group of humans together who genuinely want to work on a problem. That's when like some special stuff happens.
At the top of the interview, you said you were and still are white. Can you speak to your experience being who you are?
I spoke in the past tense. It's like, of course, like,
other people have done it. Other people have done it.
Maybe it's how Jackson. I mean, he went the other way. It doesn't matter. Sorry, the question was, what's it like?
Can you speak to your experience being who you are? Being a white, being a woman. What has your experience been like in an industry that is changing, but is still so many men? And I'm remembering a story you told me about when you would go to trade shows or conferences, and people would assume you were the event organizer or maybe Marcom's lead. So tell me about that.
I mean, that still happens today. So I guess energy, it's still very white. It can still be male, especially in senior roles. So as a white woman, I am conscious that I do sit in somewhat of an in-between place, right? Like I've benefited from privilege in many ways. And at the same time, I've absolutely felt those moments where some assumption was made, or I was underestimated or talked over, or had to work harder to be seen as credible. I remember putting on glasses and like a bun at very early utility meetings. And so I guess I feel a responsibility to be thoughtful about it. I'm still figuring it out. I definitely don't think about my identity as like a defining feature of my career, but I'm also trying to lead by example and recognize the privilege and what kind of example I set and make sure we're creating a space for people of all types of backgrounds, at Voltus in particular.
In those moments when people assume you're the events organizer, how do you handle that?
I sometimes try on different things for size. Like I try to be really gracious about it because people can get really embarrassed. Like they don't mean to. They're not, and so I don't want to make people feel badly about it. And at the same time, I don't want to shy away from, well, I'm the CEO. It's, really nice to meet you. And so I just try to like go through it. I try to explain it directly and move on quickly. And I don't know, hopefully I'm open to feedback on it though.
Oh, that sounds right to me. You mentioned being a parent and having 2 kids. You also alluded to separating with your husband. You're also leading a growing company. You're a CEO, you're a founder. You're doing all of these things at the same time. What is it like doing all of that at once?
Hearing you say it makes me want to take a nap. I'm like, no, I'm happy to talk about it. I mean, I recently went through a divorce. I don't mind talking about it. It's amicable, and we're amazing co-parents to these 2 amazing children, which is really the most important thing. I will say that I was actually recently reflecting on this to a friend. Half the time I'm a solo mom, and that is hard. Like that is hard. It's hard working. And doing that. And I'm only doing that half the time. So like it gives me it both allows me to relate to solo parents in a way that, you think you do because maybe your partner travels a little bit and you're like, gosh, that was a hard week. But I relate now more directly, and I'm in complete awe because half the time I don't have my kids.
Yeah.
And that's when I can do things like travel for work or whatever. And so overall, it's a balancing act. I've been very fortunate to have, and I think this is key, like you need a really supportive partner, whatever that is, be it your actual partner, your co-parents, your colleagues, my co-founders, friends along the way. Like it is definitely not easy. So being able to talk about it and ask for help, I think is like the one bit of advice. But yeah, people these days ask me how I am, and I say busy, but good busy. There's a lot going on, but it's all good.
Yeah. I appreciate you just being open to talking about it too. That's the whole point of the show is, humans, all kinds of stuff happens in life, and it's so common, but if we don't talk about these things, it feels othered in a way that it shouldn't be and doesn't need to be. So I just appreciate you bringing your full self and the full experience to the conversation.
Yeah, thank you.
Last question before we move and close with our high voltage round, which is if this vision for a flexible, responsive grid comes to life, which it already is, what does the industry look like in a decade, and what role is Voltus playing?
Okay. I think we constantly underestimate cost curve reductions. So I'm going to say that in 10 years, the grid is massively more reliable and affordable. We've cut system costs by something like 50%, and we've done so without limiting economic growth or killing the climate. And as for Voltus, we're the flex layer of that system. So demand side flexibility has become widely recognized as core infrastructure. We've got hundreds of gigawatts of flexible load and storage and other distributed resources flowing through our platform, and that's how it all works.
Wow. Well said. Well said. All right, we're going to close with our high voltage round. Quick questions, quick answers, like a few words per answer. Dana, if you were an animal, what animal would you be? Not what you want to be, what you would be.
Okay. Let's see. I have 2 animals flying around in my mind. One is like a border collie, but actually I think I'm going to prefer a red fox. Specific, but like not the sly fox kind, like the kind that you'd maybe almost see on a ski slope on occasion. So it's like curious, adaptable. I'm going to go with that. It's also the mascot for my kids' school, so it's front of mind.
Cute. Yeah, I think you are our first red fox.
First red fox. Okay, great.
Yeah. What inspires you?
Like the mission here and making the grid making power something that is not a trade-off between economic growth and power, or between the environment and power. I want to make power and growth not a trade-off.
Beautiful. If you had to start a new career tomorrow, what would it be?
Can I go back to an old career where I was a ski instructor?
Oh, yeah, yeah, you can.
Yeah, I taught kids. Like I like teaching. I think I like teaching. I
Mm,
like teaching kids in
mm,
particular.
mm-hmm,
And I also like skiing. So
mm-hmm.
that's what's
And you're
coming
in
to mind.
Colorado now, right? So
I'm in, right. So
you could
I'm
do
in
it.
Boulder, Colorado. So we can do it. This is a
Mm.
possible thing.
Other than yourself, to whom do you attribute your success?
It takes a village. Like
Mm,
it's
mm,
been all of the
mm-hmm.
mentors along the way, my parents, my bosses. Am I allowed to give a lengthy answer? I also think my
Short, short,
kids, like,
short answer,
let's
but
just
this
go
is
with
good.
like kids also keep me grounded.
Yeah, yeah, indeed.
Hmm.
Tell me about a specific time that you have failed.
Just one.
Just one, just
Okay.
one.
Uh, okay. What's coming to mind is my first performance review at EnerNOC. My boss
Mm,
basically told me, to whom I owe a lot. So Don
mm,
Jenkins told me
mm.
basically that it didn't matter that I was right, that I was like kind of being a jerk, and that if I couldn't
Oh,
communicate how I was right in a way that was empathetic and ultimately effective, that it just did not matter. I walked away crying and
wow.
was like, oh my God, I have failed. Like I used to get good grades and I'm going to fail this job.
Mm,
But
mm,
it's something that, I really keep in mind. Like it doesn't
mm,
matter if you're right. You have to be effective and communicate. And
hmm. That's amazing feedback
it was
that he
great.
gave you. Yeah, that's what I tell my 2.5-year-old when he's asking for something. I'm like, how do you ask effectively?
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
yeah, I did not have a good first review, so it was really humbling.
hmm. What is something that you thought was true that you no longer believe?
Oh, that like reason will prevail. Like I don't know that like things might be rational. Like I just see so many irrational things out there that
Mm,
don't make sense or don't follow
mm,
like economic reason.
yeah.
And that's the engineer coming out at me again. I'm like, well, I don't. But why? Like logic.
When are you your best self?
Uh, I think when I have like my kids front of mind, or if I've been with them
Mm,
recently, or I'm with them
mm,
actively, it just like gives me a really good perspective on whatever other
mm,
nonsense is happening. There's this
mhm,
like grounding thing that happens.
mm, yeah. What is your worst trait?
I can be impatient.
That might be the
Yeah.
most common
Oh, is
CEO
that a founder
answer.
thing? Yeah. I already told you that sometimes if I'm right, I get frustrated if I'm not effective. So I think that
Mm-hmm.
might go hand in hand. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm working on it.
It's good. If you could change one thing about the world, what would it be?
Like I'm so oriented around energy, but
Mm,
um I guess not to sound corny, but um the idea that like people are hungry when some of us have so much was
mm,
really getting me the other day.
mm-hmm.
And just this like wrong distribution of
Mm-hmm.
some of the things that are wealth in the sense of happiness. So be
Mm,
it power or food or something like that. And
mm-hmm.
they're
Mm-hmm.
connected. I guess like the real answer to that ski instructor question is I think I'd
Mm,
probably be in food somehow
mm,
if not energy. It's
mm-hmm.
this like core fundamental thing that I don't understand,
Yeah.
that I don't like, that some of us have and some of us don't.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember maybe I was in my 20s when I learned that there was actually enough of everything. It just wasn't distributed fairly or
Right. We
evenly.
just need that peanut butter knife
For all things.
and the peanut butter. Well,
Storage,
yeah,
food, the peanut
yeah,
butter, bring it all.
yeah.
If there was just one person who was gonna hear this episode, who would you want it to be?
I think my daughter.
Aw.
Yeah.
Yeah. What would you tell her if she were to listen to it?
Uh, well, so one, I do struggle a little bit with sometimes like the guilt of working a lot, and I
Mm,
want her
mm-hmm,
to understand why I do it and what motivates me.
mm,
And one thing I think is I don't regret the decision that I left Voltus for a bit there, like one little bit.
mm-hmm,
And I would want future Sasha to know that
mm. It's beautiful. Finish these sentences for me. Companies fail because.
they don't manage cash.
Mm. If you really knew me, you would know.
I don't know how to answer that. If you really knew me, you would know. I'm actually, I guess I would say like I'm actually pretty sensitive and I do care what people
Mm,
think. Yeah.
mm, mm-hmm, mm. Success is.
Happiness and fulfillment.
If I could have done one thing differently, I would have.
Maybe move to Boulder earlier. Yeah. That's not that deep, but
No, it's
just,
okay. It doesn't have to be. If the world knew me for one thing, it would be
demand side load flexibility. I don't know.
on brand. I'm most proud of.
Oh, my kids. I'm sure a lot of people say that. It's hard. You can't not say that.
They do. And then last question, to build a successful startup, what it takes is
making sure you're having fun along the way with the people you're doing it with.
Well, what a perfect way to end. Dana, thank you so much. I really enjoyed getting to know you better and getting to know Voltus and the VPP world better. Thank you for joining me.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Dana Guernsey is the co-founder and CEO of Voltus. Join us for new stories each month of founders who are building our clean, energy-abundant future. Their upbringings, their risks, their failures, and their breakthroughs that are transforming our world. What It Takes is produced by Powerhouse Ventures and Powerhouse Innovation. Powerhouse Ventures backs seed-stage startups developing innovative software to advance clean energy, mobility, and industry. If you are building something in this space, get in touch with our team via our site, powerhouse-ventures.co. Powerhouse Innovation is a best-in-class consulting firm powered by the strongest energy innovation network, data, and team in the industry. We partner with the world's leading corporations, investors, and utilities to source and evaluate disruptive startups, shaping the future of energy and industry. To learn more, visit powerhouse-innovation.co. As I say on every show, if you are a first or longtime listener, you can support the show by giving us a rating or a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And if you have a friend who you think might like this episode, please send them the link. And with this being our last show of the year, I just wanted to say thank you for listening and for being on this remarkable journey with us. I'm our executive producer. Julia Ranney is our producer. Christopher McGovern is our media engineer. Original music by Sean Marquand. I'm Emily Kirsch. This is What It Takes.